Hello and welcome. You're listening to the Bump Podcast, a place for the believers of the unexplained, monsters, and paranormal. Join us, and we'll go face to face with what goes bump in the night. Hey there, believers. I got a great show for you this week. Today, I'm bringing on Chris, and we're going to get into shadow figures and his ability to see demons. It's going to be an interesting episode. We've had to reschedule a couple of times. Mostly, I think it's just been my fault. I was feeling a little under the weather about a week ago and had to cancel on him. But we're back in action. We're set to record tonight. So thank the Lord for that. I am aware that this microphone is sounding a little staticky, maybe. Thank you all for not saying anything about it. But I've noticed on edits and stuff that it sounds kind of boxy. I don't know what else to call it. It's just kind of like staticky, like I'm too close to the mic or something. But hopefully this will be the last episode that it sounds like that. Thank you to Patricia and Micah Jones. Your contribution through buymeacoffee.com covered the cost of a new mic and stand. So I greatly appreciate it. I've never had anything other than like a little cheap Amazon mic that I've worked with. So to buy something the caliber of a Rode, I'm kind of nervous about it, and I hope it's as good as they say it is. But thank you. It goes a long way to help out. If you would like to donate to the show in any way, contributions can be made through buymeacoffee.com/thebumppodcast. And you can always just support the show by sharing it, leaving a 5-star rating and review. I've recently changed the category of where my show is in Apple Podcasts, which may not make a difference as far as like numbers go or anything like that. But it's been in the natural sciences category for probably a couple of years. And I've finally just moved it to the Christianity podcast section. I'm hoping that listeners there, people that are looking for that kind of podcast, will be able to find it a little more easily. Because even though if you listen to this show, there's probably half a dozen other shows that come at the unexplained from a Christian angle, I feel like this show has something, that would be good for people to hear. I know we have the content. There's great guests on every single week. And it just seems like it's plateaued for a long, long time. And I want the word of God to get out. So we'll try that out. We'll see how it goes. All right. If you have an experience that you would like to share, holler at me at thebumppodcast@gmail.com. I'm currently booking for April, I believe. April, yeah. Should be good through about halfway through that month. So if you wanna come on the show, you're not in a huge hurry, holler at me. If you are in a huge hurry, holler at me anyway, and I'll see if I can get in there maybe on a weekend morning or something like that. But it's thanks the Lord, it's a pretty tight schedule right now. Worst case scenario, I'll take a day off work. I don't mind doing that ever, hardly ever. So yeah, let's go ahead and bring Chris on the show, and I'll quit my babbling. Assuming if there's anything else, and I don't think there was. I just want to thank you guys for all the love and support. And if you listen to the show, check us out. Check it out on TikTok. I try to put full length videos, episodes on TikTok. It's a lot of work. I have to break it down into like under 10-minute segments. So there might be 18 parts to the episode, but you can watch whole episodes on TikTok. Um, you can catch episodes on YouTube as long as it's a video episode. You know, that's the same for TikTok. Yeah, they're both the same way. If it's a video episode, I'll try to put them on there. All right, as well as Instagram and Facebook, and just let's try to just build this up as much as we can, and just share, share, share. All right, hold on. All right, did you get the notification?
Yes, yes, I heard it.
All right, Chris, thank you so much for coming on the show, brother. I'm sorry that I had to postpone it, but
No, it's okay. That's fine. I mean, the first night was kind of a a mix up, kind of unsuspected circumstances with my kids, so they were just, you know, boys will be boys. I mean, most
yeah,
people don't like that saying, but it's true, man. They're just wild and crazy. I got feral kids, so
it's all right. They come first, dude.
yeah,
Always, always. So I don't know where you wanted to start at. Um, your email had me intrigued. You talked about shadow figures and demonic activity. So
yep,
just wherever you want to take it, I'm totally down for it, man.
yeah. But there's the demonic activity that I had that was really recent was I talk about it on Drew on what was it? Cryptic Warfare on his podcast. If you anybody wants to listen to that, you could definitely listen to that. But that was like the most recent stuff, most recent and most um I'd have to say the most terrifying experience I've ever had in my entire life, honestly.
Hmm.
Um uh you know um yeah, it's just got me thinking about it all over again.
Yeah, I'm sorry, man.
Yeah. No, 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 it's fine. No, I mean, I like talking about this stuff because I feel um I've always been a Christian and I was saved at 12 and I left the Catholic Church when I was 12 because I wanted to be um basically evangelical, wanted to leave the Catholic. I was raised Roman Catholic.
Yeah,
So it was very strict. Um and I just didn't feel anything in there at all. Um I didn't really feel God's love or anything. Like it was always um what you should do, like works. It
right.
wasn't based on salvation, or the one way to through Christ. And and when I experienced that in a youth group, it really was life changing for me. Um, but when I was having these experiences all throughout my life, you're not allowed to talk about it as a Roman Catholic. Like they tell you if you talk about it, you're given it power. So it's just basically kind of like just bury it and just move on with your life and pray and just hope it doesn't bother you.
Hmm.
Um, and then being kind of like I was independent Baptist when I got saved, and then they never went over any of that stuff. It was just
Right.
like, um, yeah, you're you're either doing something wrong in your life or that didn't happen. Like there's something else. Yeah, it was just one of those things. And so I just kind of shut up about it. I didn't talk about it anymore. I never brought it up. I just buried it.
Wow.
And it was always very confusing for me because I didn't know what to do. And that's why I like talking about it. Like I really feel compelled to speak about this because I know there's somebody else out there that's maybe they're a new saved Christian and they are having these instances that they don't know where to go.
Right.
They just and then but yeah, yeah. So I mean, yeah, I have to say that instance, that was the most terrifying thing I ever had to do. And the reason why I knew I had to do it is because I have children and I have a wife and it's um my job to protect them.
Right.
And I
Yeah,
knew that
absolutely.
I had to go in there and confront it. And
So this has happened from the time you were a kid all the way up to recently.
uh the demonic thing, that was totally new. And when it spoke to me and told me that it wanted to speak with me was definitely terrifying. And then so I mean, I guess so on Drewski's show, I messaged him that I wanted to be on his I wanted to give my story.
Right.
And we set up at a time and everything. And it was like a Thursday or something like that. It was like middle of the week when I messaged him. That weekend is when that incident happened with the demonic demon in our house.
Wow.
Like it was literally within a 72-hour period that happened in our house. And what me and my wife discussed, that anything really supernatural like that, my wife is there. She's witnessed almost every single thing that's happened supernatural to me. She was right there. She's
Yeah.
always been a witness of it. And I don't find that as a coincidence. I feel that because God placed her in my life to support me in those fights.
Absolutely,
Um,
man.
so just kind of like a real quick with that. Um, so that evening, I put my son down and my daughter down, and I went in the living room, and so I had to sit down with her because she was still putting our third one. He was starting to settle down. He's like a year and a half right now, and so and I heard the bedroom door latch on our kid's bedroom. So I'm like, oh, he's up. My other son, my oldest son, I was like, he's up. Sometimes that happens. So I go down the hallway. The door is open, which I know I don't leave it open, and they're sound asleep. And I'm like, well,
Mm.
that's weird. I always know I keep the door latched
Right.
all the time. It's just one of those things you do as a parent. Like, what you do every single night. So I reclose it. I latch it, make sure, go back to the living room. I sit next to my others. I don't know what that was. That was weird. And then no longer as I'm sitting there within a minute, I would say, our fan in our bedroom, the light switch, you can actually hear the chain being pulled and you see the lights come on and then it pulls again and you could hear it and the light goes off. So I'm thinking some really stupid person's in my house.
Right.
So I go grab my firearm. I tell her to stay here and just in case. As soon as I get into the hallway, I feel that it's not a person. Like the charge is just unbelievable.
Yeah.
I turn around, I said, it's not a human. And she looked at me like, what? And I'm like, I need you to start praying. I'm going to go down the hallway. So I put my gun away. It's useless. So
Right.
I go down the hallway. And as soon as I come into our bedroom door, you go to the very end of the hallway, there's my kid's room on the right, and there's a spare bedroom. And then on the left is our bedroom. As soon as I open the door, just the unfathomable wave of electricity in that room just spills out. And I'm instantly terrified. I'm not afraid. I am terrified completely. And the only thing I said to myself, my wife heard me. She heard me say this. I said, well, I believe in God. Let's do this. And
Amen.
I walked into that room and it was standing in my bedroom next to my bed on my side of the bed. And we have a window right there. And my neighbor, he has a motion light. Sometimes it's on, sometimes it's not. This night it was on and I couldn't see through it, whatever it was. I couldn't see through it to see the light, but the light was on and no light was coming through it. And I said, you need to leave. You're not welcome here. This is a Christian household. We believe in God. You need to leave. And usually when I tell things to leave, it gone. See ya. This wasn't. It stood up even taller. And it wasn't very tall. It was like maybe 4 feet. It was not very big, but it stood up and it said, I need to speak with you. Just normal, no, nothing scary. It was just like, I need to speak with you.
Man, you gave me chills all over my body, dude. I
And
ain't
I'm
lying.
like, and I'm like, I'm not speaking to you. There's no conversation we need to have. You are not allowed in my house. I don't know how you got in my house, but you need, and then I got really vocal. I
Right.
said, you need to get the F out of my house. You are not welcome here. And then it jumped up onto my headboard and it was like crouching. And he goes, we need to speak. And I said, no, we're not speaking. This is not a conversation we're having. I am not having a conversation with you. You need to leave immediately underneath the Christ that I believe in. You need to leave. Get out. You're
Right.
not welcome here and do not come back. And it just slowly just got off my bed and then like stepped through the window and it like walked into the yard, my side yard, and it just dissipated. It just like
What?
just vaporized into nothing. And then like the whole room changed, everything changed, like everything went back to normal. I'm even like it was just that was
Man.
the most intense thing ever that I've ever had. Um, I've never had anything like that spoke to me. That was
Right.
the first, like verbally. Like I've heard like it wanted to speak with me, like it would try to say stuff, but never verbally would say, I need to speak with you. We need to talk. And I'm like, absolutely not. That's not happening.
Yeah, man, for real.
And um but my wife, I can hear my wife. She was praying. I can hear her voice carrying down the hallway. She's praying. And it left. And then that was that was the end of that. Like as fast as it started, it ended just as quickly. I mean, that whole thing was maybe 5, 6 minutes. That's it.
Wow.
And and
Well,
I knew that was like guys, and I told her, I sat down next to her, I said, I hope you're ready for this ride. And she's like, what are you talking about? I said, that is not a coincidence that I talked to Drewski about being on his episode to talk about the things that I've experienced as a Christian. And then
yeah.
nothing shows up. That is not a coincidence. That
No,
was
not at all.
it wanted to not have me speak of this stuff.
Yeah.
And
Were you able to make out any kind of features? I mean, you see it moving around. Like,
just pure darkness, just nothing. It was like there was no eye glow or nothing. It was just complete like a shadow person. Like if I was going to describe it like a shadow person,
yeah.
but it was like it was detailed in what you can see. Like it wasn't like a human form. It was short, but it was very like I don't know, like knees and elbows. It was like really long. It was just yeah, just didn't move naturally. You know, it was just
Hmm.
um but that was just over the last few months that happened, like 4 months ago.
Gracious.
So, um, but like other experiences I had wasn't quite like that. Like, my mother-in-law was living with us for a while. That was the spare room she was in, and she was going to a Pentecostal church here in my town, and she invited us. I was like, well, okay, we'll go. That's
Right.
fine. So we went, and I remember going there as a child once or twice when I was a kid, and it was really great church, fantastic. Re from what I remember, it was really great.
Right.
Um, but now it's kind of dwindled because we kind of have like a mega church here in town, so it's really small. There was only like maybe 25 people in the whole church,
Yeah.
which unfortunately that's kind of happened in my town. Like the big mega church opened up and then everybody just kind of flocked over there, like the younger kids and younger couples and younger crowd.
Oh, yeah.
Because they got, you know, lights and music and yeah, you know, it is, unfortunate. But so we're in there and I'm are going through and I like I said, I wasn't raised Pentecostal. So like the whole speaking in tongues thing for me has always kind of kept me on edge
Right.
because I never experienced it. So there's that aspect. And two, because of all the things I've experienced in my life, I don't know what they're saying. And that always freaks me out. Um, But I always, well, there's a translator, they're being biblical. I'll just go with it. That's fine. um, you know, and so the pastor, he was saying, "Oh, anybody who feels moved by the Holy Spirit, speak in tongues." But and then nobody was doing it, so he was just praying, just normally. But we were kind of in the back of the church because we didn't know anybody, and there was this woman kind of to the right side behind me in the next pews over, and she's speaking in something. And as soon as she starts, my wife looks at me. She goes, "Are you okay?" I said, "No, not at all." She's like, "What's wrong?" I said, "I want to fight. Like, I want to fight. Whatever's in here is not right." And I look up and I see the pastor, he's praying, and I open my eyes and I see stuff moving in the background of the church. And it's running down the aisles and running back up and
Oh,
running behind him and running underneath his pulpit and like running out. And I'm like, whatever this woman is praying, she's not speaking God's word. Um, as soon as she stopped, it was done. Like it just disappeared. Like they just ran out the church. And so I asked the pastor, I say, "Hey, I'd like you to come to my house. I want to speak to you about some stuff because my wife says I should." And it was about like me understanding about the gifts that I have. And I wanted to relay to him and actually have a pastor would actually want to sit down and speak with me about it
yeah, for sure.
and try to have an understanding of it. And he came over and we are talking, and I told him some of this stuff. And I said, "Hey, by the way, the woman that's was behind me, she's pretty tall. Um, I said, when you were up there praying and she was speaking to herself very quietly, she was saying stuff. I couldn't remember exactly or clearly hear it." I said, "But when she started, things were running around in your church, behind you, next to you, and up and down the aisles of the pews." And he looked at me and he goes, "What?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Something tells me she's very sick. Whatever it is has taken over her." And he's like, "How'd you know she was sick?" He said, "You know her?" I said, "No, I don't know her." I said, "I've never been to your church before. How can I know her?" I said, "It feels like she has cancer. I think she's going to pass away soon." And he's like, "She has stage 4 terminal cancer. She's probably not going to last a month. I don't know how you knew that."
Wow.
I was like, "Well, I just know. I don't know what to tell you." I said, if you allow her to keep talking or speaking in tongues without a translator, something really bad is going to happen to your church because they're doing stuff in your church." And he was like, "Well, okay, I'll talk to her about it and everything." And he says, "But okay, yeah, that's fine." And I could tell it was a lot for him.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
like either this guy is off his rocker or what if this is really true?
Right.
And he still talks to me, but it's very like at a distance because then we went back to church about a few weeks later, and I didn't know this. He was put in his resignation. He was going to leave the church and go teach at a Christian school in southern part of Florida. And and I told him, I said, "Did you talk to her?" He said, "Oh yeah, yeah." I said, "If she keeps doing it, something bad's going to happen to this church. I don't know what it is, but it's not good. So I'm just telling you." Well, right after he left, 2 weeks later, the church fell into a sinkhole.
What?
Yeah, the whole church, the whole commissary. And it took like
Hmm.
9 months to fill in the sinkhole to rebuild the church.
Man, I just read a, I finished a book. I've had it for like a year and it stayed in my bedroom. And it's weird because Tony Merkel brought this up on one of his shows. and he had it for like 3 years before he read his copy. But I had a book called He Came to Set the Captives Free, and I had it for about a year. Never, like, I started to read it a few times, never did, but over the last few days, I've read the book, and it goes into um, a former Satanist. She was like a
Hmm.
high priestess in the satanic cult, and a big portion of it was talking about how these you know these Satanists, these witches, would go into churches to bring them down.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you feel like maybe that's what she was doing? Like, was she there on assignment?
I don't know. I don't know, but I know she did not survive. She passed away
Yeah.
very recently after that happened at the church.
Wow.
I've never seen her again.
That's incredible, man.
Yeah. It might, like I said, anybody can say, oh, this or that. You talk to my wife. She's been there. She
Yeah.
knew that. I said that to him. And ever since I told that pastor that and that happened, like he's very cordial with me, but he's just like, I don't know what to do with that.
Yeah, for real, man.
And neither do I.
Yeah.
I don't know myself. And
Yeah.
um like those things it's weird. It's just I know,
Right.
it's just like I get images of stuff or I just know. I can't explain it. And it's not like I can just perform it whenever. It's not like that.
Right. How long has that been
Um
going on?
oh, my whole life?
Was it?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, everything from foreseeing people I love, like people that I know that die. I know how they die and when they die. I just don't know who they are when it happens because I see it as their point of view and
Mhm.
I actually experience their pain.
That's a
And
tough one.
usually it's when I'm sleeping.
Yeah.
So I dream it or or whatever else they call it. I what what's the other
Kind of like a
the
vision or
yeah, yeah, something like that or yeah, because I've had four four dreams like that and all of them came true.
wow.
And exactly how the person dies.
I really hope you're not coming on the show to tell me that you had a dream about me or anything.
No, no.
Okay.
Mm-mm. No, well, here's the thing. Like when I have those dreams or premonitions or whatever you want to call them, I don't know who the person is. I don't know if they're male or female. I never know until it's over,
Wow.
until the person passes away. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that was them. I dreamed
Right.
about them 4 weeks ago or a month ago. And like everything from like one person I went through the police academy with, she died very tragically on a boat. And I dreamed about how she passed away. Or just recently, my cousin, how he passed away. He was killed on the highway, and I dreamed about how he died.
Man, I'm sorry. It's
Um,
got to be a heavy burden to carry.
um, yeah, it's actually in plain English, it sucks
Yeah.
because I can never tell anybody anything. Like I can't like, hey, don't get in the car next week.
Right.
Or don't go on that boat, don't go on that fishing trip, or it's yeah, it's I don't know who they are or anything. I just experience how they die. The thing is apparently it's a family my biological mother has the same gift.
That was my next question. How do you think you got this?
Yeah, she had it, and her father, my grandfather, he had another version of the gift where he can perceive what people did, and he was um, a Chilean uh, investigator for the military, and so like when people did crimes, he knew that they did it.
Right.
He just had to prove it.
Wow.
So like he would like interview people, and he would like, yeah, they did it. I know what they did. I know how they did it because he just saw it all in his head.
Right. You just had to get them to confess.
Yeah, he just or get the evidence. Yeah.
Wow.
And apparently it's um a family gift for generations for as far as they can remember. And my family, that part of the family is from what from the Gaza, Israel area. So that's where my that extended family is from.
Wow.
So they it goes back as far as they can remember. Like everybody, somebody, every generation had a gift of some sort. But as far as my mother, my biological mother told me, I have the most at all of them.
Yeah.
They've never, I've like I could see things, I can speak to them, like the whole thing in my bedroom.
Right.
Um, Premonitions, dreams, you know,
Yeah, man.
seeing shadow figures my whole life. So even when I was a kid, I just thought it was imagination as a child. Like that's what my mom told me. Like my adopted mom, I should say, my
Right.
adopted mom told me, like, "Oh, you're just too much imagination, too much television or too much whatever."
Yeah.
And
Like,
yeah,
uh, is this what you wanted to talk to the preacher about too? The pastor, like seeing shadow figures?
yeah, a little bit. I touched on it, and he said, "Well, just you should anoint your house and you should pray and get yourself." He didn't blame me, which was nice. It wasn't like, like, "Oh, are you messing with the Ouija board? Have you ever been in the occult?" I never did any of that. I um, never did any of that kinds of stuff. Um, but I mean, but learning more and more these past few months, like my biological mother, her family's all Masons, and then the family that I was adopted into, my dad's father, which he was adopted by, was also a Mason, a very high-ranking Mason. He was a Shriner all the way up to, you imagine, a 33rd Mason all the way up, and he was part of um, societies that my dad was not allowed to go to.
Yeah.
So he would go to,
So do you think that these figures that you've seen all your life, you think they're connected to, like, do you think you're seeing something negative that's around you, or do you think that um it's almost like something that's been put on you?
I think it's they want me. They've always wanted me.
Yeah.
I never realized that until the last 3 months. Literally, last 3 months, I've been connecting a lot of things. Like, okay, like my biological mother, when she became pregnant with me, before she became pregnant, she was 14. She went to this huge Masonic party with her father. Like the whole family went, all the families went. It was kind of a celebration of something. I'm not really sure. And the headmaster of the temple came up to my mom and he said, I need to tell you something. I've been told, and your father needs to hear this. And he said, you are a very powerful medium. You need to become a Mason
Mm.
so you can learn how to control it. She was 14. And my grandfather was a very high Mason. He was a 33rd Mason also himself.
Yeah.
And so, but what I've pieced together just recently is that when my mother became pregnant with me, the man who told her that he loved her all of a sudden said, "Oh, I'm homosexual. I just wanted to see if I would love a woman." Well,
Right.
he courted her for a long time. My mom was 17 at the time.
Right.
And if anybody doesn't know their history, in Chile at that time was underneath Pinochet. It was a nationalist country.
Hmm.
If you were communist, if you were homosexual, you were captured and tortured to death.
Mm.
Now, my grandfather was a retired military investigator. He could have turned in that guy very easily and he would have never been found,
Oh yeah, for sure.
but he never did. And what my thought is that that guy was a Mason. Masons stick together. And that guy is still alive. My mom said she saw him. He's from a very influential family in Chile.
Mm,
Um, and when I was conceived during the winter solstice. So I feel that it was done purposely, and that's why I have these abilities, gifts,
right.
whatever, that
Yeah.
are
So,
more than what my family traditionally had because they knew my mother was a powerful medium. And I think they wanted me for whatever reason. And the other thing is, my grandfather, my mom's dad, he put it in the paperwork that I had to be adopted out of the country, that I
really.
was not allowed to be adopted in Chile, that I had to be adopted out of the country. Most most preferred America,
Yeah.
United States. And I
To
always
get
thought
you,
that was weird. I always thought that was really weird.
to get you out
But
of there.
yeah, I felt like he wanted me out of there. And it wasn't because of shame, is because, and here's the other thing. I didn't know this. Just last few weeks, I found out he named me after his father.
Really.
And he gave me the family name. It's on my paperwork. He gave me the family name so I can find them. I think he was protecting me.
I
I
think
think
that's what it sounds like, man.
I think he was protecting me and he didn't want whatever they were planning on doing to me in Chile.
Yeah. It was like almost like you were going to be dedicated
Yeah.
to
Yeah. I really
whatever.
think to whatever they were going to do to me or whatever they wanted to do. Yeah.
And so you've
I
been in America's, for lack of better words, stuck with these abilities
yeah.
and but drawn to the Lord rather
Yep.
than whatever they
Always been
were up
drawn
to.
to the Lord. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I even went to Bible college. I was actually going to become a camp minister. That was one of the things I
Wow.
wanted to do.
That'd be awesome, man.
Yeah. That's one of the things I wanted to do. But then I think it got a hold of me when I was in college and it severely gave me depression.
Yeah.
And I was kicked out.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, yeah,
So
that's yeah.
you've been stuck
Listening
in
to
the
that,
spiritual
it's
war.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And there's just so many other things so like my genetic bloodline from my father's side is actually connected to an ancient Irish king from Northern Ireland. You ever heard Niall of the Nine Hostages?
I think I have. Yeah.
I am a direct link of him.
Wow.
So there's royal family there, and I'm also related to bloodline to French royalty also from my father's side. So I think it was just like this very elaborate web to have my mom give birth to somebody like me. And when my grandfather found out, he couldn't do anything to the Mason. So he set up and literally had me shipped out of the country.
Yeah. Well, it had to be tough for him too.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Yeah. I didn't know he named me after his father. I never knew that until 3 weeks ago. That was the first I've ever heard of that. My mom told me that.
Man.
So she's like, yeah, he named you after his father. And she told me, she's like, he loved his father. Like they
Yeah.
were, they were very close,
No
you
doubt.
know? So
That's incredible, dude.
yeah. So, and it's funny because, the rest of the family is, they're very Chilean.
Hmm.
And what I mean by that is that like, when you see me, I'm huge compared to them by height and everything, but they're like, you look like your grandfather. You're just much taller.
Yeah.
Because the average height of my family, like even the males are like 5'6", five
Right.
five, and I'm 5'10", almost six, almost 5'11".
Right.
So, and they see me, they're like, wow, he's like, you know, dad 2.0. That's what they said. Like he's just like huge, you know. So, but I mean, um, but yeah, there's just some of the instances that I've had. Um, and then the things that my adopted mom did. Um, I talked before on the other episode with Rayleigh, right? I'm horrible at names. Um, on the Midwest podcast. I'm probably not saying it correctly,
All right.
but so like my mom dove into the occult for a little bit,
Okay.
and when I was 6 years old, I think that's when the like like there was things I was experiencing, and that was like when it was just completely ripped open, and then that's when everything I was experiencing everything full throttle as a child
Yeah.
from 6 years old,
Like,
and like
what kind of stuff were you exposed to, man? If you don't mind talking about it, you know.
no, so to kind of to get into it, like I had kind of have to like set it up.
Yeah.
My mom was engaged to this guy who coincidentally was connected to the mob um in New Jersey. And so she was engaged to him. They were supposed to get married. And then all of a sudden he called the wedding off. He broke the engagement with my mom. And that completely devastated my mother. Like
Yeah.
it was probably the worst I've ever seen her ever. Um, so that, and then instead of, so this was the real kicker for my mom. The guy married another woman on the exact same day he was supposed to marry my mom at the same church, and they had the same name. Like
No way.
my mom's name was Linda. And so he married another woman named Linda at the church, same day, everything. And that just devastated my mother. And I'm not
Yeah,
giving her excuses, but I mean, that's what really did it.
that would
And
do it.
that's, yeah, I mean, and she had a pretty rough life. I mean, um, so she was just miserable. I remember my mom was just drinking all the time. She was a registered nurse, ER nurse, trauma nurse, fantastic. But she was just one of those functional ones. She'd get home from work, just drink.
Yeah.
you know, and I didn't know any better. I mean, I was 5, 6 years old, and I thought she was just, drinking orange juice. She's just on her fifth screwdriver of the morning after coming home from work,
Right.
you know. Um, that's the other thing. She worked nights. She made more money. I stayed in the apartment by myself, and we didn't live in a very good neighborhood. I mean, the second floor right above us, we had a pedophile that always tried to get me.
Oh my gosh, man. You've been
Or me and my
exposed to it.
friends. Yeah, me and my friends. He always tried to, and I used to, at 5, 6 years old, I used to carry a knife to go do laundry. Um, but I mean, looking back on that, I'm like, oh my God. I mean, my oldest son is 6, and like, that's what I was doing. I was carrying a knife, a paring knife, while going to do laundry as a kid. Um, just thinking about that now, it's just like, oh my God, how can that even happen? But I never told my mom that stuff. Like, I just, that was normal. That was normal. That was my life.
Right.
Um, but yeah, so she met somebody at work that told her, oh, you should do this or you should that. So she was getting into tarot readings and palm readings and, having seances in the house so she can talk to her dad. And so all this stuff was just building up in our apartment. And the more she did, the more things were coming around. Like, they were coming to me. They were bothering me. And I think it's because of the gifts that are originally, however it was put together. And yeah, um, sorry.
No, you're good, man.
But so somebody, I guess, I don't know who it was, told her you can put a curse on that woman. And my mom was like, oh, well, yeah, that's what I'll do. I'll do that. So she went to a shop somewhere where she got all the stuff she needed, and they told her how to do it.
Mhm.
And I remember I was asleep in my room. She put me to bed, and it was, I don't know what time it was, but it was definitely dark. And I heard her talking. which was weird because I thought she was going to be at work. I think that's what kind of threw me off. I was like, who's in the house? Who's in the apartment? No one's supposed to be
Right.
here. I sleep by myself. And I was 6 years old. I mean,
Right.
6 years old, sleeping by yourself. Well, your mom's at work, just the way it was. So I got out of my room and I just went right next to her door and I cracked it open. And she's got her sewing table all closed up. So she's got this red runner on it. And she has this huge black candle. And saying, she was saying, let her head spin around until it pops off and dies. Let her head spin around until it pops off and dies. And when she was saying this, and then my mom, where's the other thing? My mom knew Latin because she grew up Roman Catholic, and her dad made her go to Roman Catholic Latin services.
Right. Yeah.
So she was actually, between that, she was actually speaking Latin, this
Wow.
curse.
Yeah.
And when she was doing it, the light, the flame was black. I remember this very distinctively. And it kind of reminded me of, you remember the Disney movie, The Black Cauldron?
Oh yeah, man.
That's what it reminded me of. And I was like, Mom, what are you doing? And as soon as she stopped, the flame went normal. It was like the regular flame, red color, orange flame. And she turned around, very, very nonchalant. I'm putting a curse on Frank's wife. Go back to bed. I was like, okay. I just closed the door and went to bed. I, you know,
Yeah.
and that night, everything just kicked off. Like things were flying around my room. The sheets were being pulled off my bed. Things were sitting on my bed that I didn't see. Um, I heard voices and I didn't understand what they were saying. That was the night that everything just went haywire for me.
Man.
And then I was so frightened. I just fell asleep. I think I just blocked it out and I just went to sleep. And that next morning I woke up and my mom made, scrambled eggs and bacon and pancakes and orange juice. Like the whole thing was all out. And it was the first time she wasn't, you know, pickled. You know what I mean? She
Yeah,
wasn't
man.
drunk and never talked to her about it. Never brought it up again. We just kind of went on with our lives. And this crazy, sad thing is that woman went medically insane and she was bedridden and she passed away in her bed while her
Goodness.
husband took care of her for 5 years.
Oh gosh, man.
And um, yeah,
Yeah.
it's horrible. It's horrible.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry you had to go through all that, dude. That's that's a heavy weight for a little boy, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, even as an adult, it's hard to comprehend everything. Like
Yeah,
that,
man.
to get all that and understand it all.
Yeah,
Um,
for sure.
yeah, yeah. So I mean, that's when I started seeing the shadows. That's when it was very predominant in my life. Like everywhere I went, I seen them everywhere. And then having intrusive thoughts all the time.
Yeah.
Um, Never understood why that happened. I'd have to say, since understanding the stuff and being the power of prayer, I had to say I haven't had an intrusive thought for like 3 months, and it's really amazing.
Thank the Lord.
Yeah, and I mean, like when we were talking about hunting and stuff, like I go out hunting or whatever, and I'd just be like, just pop in my mind, let's just lean against the tree and just pull the trigger. And I'm like, what? No, I have children, I have a wife,
Yeah.
I have a good life, you
Yeah,
know,
man.
and that's just not me to think that or even want that.
Yeah. That's whispers of the enemy.
Yeah, definitely. Like 100%. And I never thought it would. I always thought it was something me. Like I was, maybe I was going nuts. But then there were times when that I wouldn't be like that. Like just driving down the road, like just pull in the next lane, have a head-on collision, unbuckle your seatbelt. Like those are the kinds of things I would hear and think.
Yeah, man.
And like it didn't have to have like wasn't like anything bad was happening in my life or anything. So like I had an argument with my wife and I'm like, I'm just gonna end it all, you know.
Yeah.
It was just be driving down the road and that would hit me or in the woods, you know, or any other things. It's
Yeah.
just really like, it just yeah, and
Yeah, man.
yeah.
I can relate to that. Um, because well, yeah, even before I got in church, it was before I got to where I was dedicated. I'd have I'd have thoughts like that come up, and where I'm at now, I'd say everything is spiritual, everything,
Yeah.
and I think that that's the enemy trying to get you before you get to where he knows you're going.
Yeah.
Because
I agree. I don't know. I told my wife, I said, I don't know where this is going for us. I don't know if I'm meant to be in a ministry
yeah,
or something else. I don't know, but it's just um, these last like I keep saying, these last few months have just been really, really wild. Like everything that's just been kind of connecting and kind of fitting in place and understanding that um it's truly a real supernatural war. It's really scary. Like,
yeah,
um, I mean, I've never seen combat. I've never seen anything like that. But I mean, I've seen people murdered where I worked, and people trying to kidnap people and stuff like that. And then, you know, different things. And then where I grew up wasn't easy, you
right,
know, carrying a knife to defend myself from a pedophile,
right,
So,
yeah, no doubt.
um,
Hey, look,
but
man, trauma is trauma. It don't
yeah,
matter, you know what I mean.
yeah,
Uh, so yeah, you carrying that, PTSD is
yeah,
it's a very real thing, man.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
it really is. And these last few months, are things falling like into place in a good way? You're making connections
Oh yeah.
with your
Yeah.
past, and it's
Well,
like a season of blessings, or
it's a mix, like the understanding, like thinking that my grandfather was protecting me, and I'm like, wow, that makes because it always bothered me that my biological father told my mom, like, oh, I'm gay, I'm not really into you. I just
right,
wanted to see if I was, and because I knew at the time in Chile that was just not accepted, and
right,
honestly, in a lot of parts in Chile, it's still not accepted.
right,
Like they're not like they're. I mean, let's let's get real. Um, 5 years ago, they legalized divorce in Chile.
okay.
And
There you go. That's a
yeah,
good
so
idea. Yeah,
like they legalized divorce. So I mean, that just kind of shows you like how hardcore Christian values are there.
right,
And I was just like, well, if my biological dad was gay, then why didn't he just disappear?
right,
Like I asked my mom that, and she's like, well, I don't know.
right.
And I'm
But
like, well, my grandfather was this. And then when she told me that my grandfather was a Mason, I put two and two together. I said, that guy had to be Mason too,
yeah,
because Masons have to back each other up no matter what.
right. And that would be
Is
that's an easy way to get out of a relationship,
yeah. Hmm.
under the guise of, you
Yeah.
know, yeah,
Yeah. And definitely. And yeah, it's just, but I mean, my mom told me, she's like, yeah, I saw him like a year ago. So,
hmm,
and I was like, did you say anything? She's like, no, he didn't even recognize me. And I was just like, wow. And then I always kind of was like, well, do I want to find him? Do I not want to find him? But after finding this out, there's no way I want to find him. I
right,
don't I don't want any relationship at
right,
all. If all that is true, which I really feel like it is true, like I can't explain how it's not, you know. Um, Especially that I have younger children. Um, I don't want them thinking like, oh, I wonder if they have gifts. Are they strong?
right.
Um,
Well, let me ask
and
this:
then
are you comfortable with a video being released on for the podcast, or do you want me to just keep this audio?
No, you can do the video. That's fine.
Okay. Okay. I didn't know if I
Yeah.
needed to not release the video portion of it or anything like that when we get to that point. I didn't
No,
know. Okay.
no, it's fine. No, I mean, I, 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 no, I, I've come to kind of peace about it because I used to always hate that I had this, and I never understood it. Why? Like, I'm a Christian. Why am I seeing these things? Why am I experiencing these things? And so it's kind of like a really big love-hate relationship that I had.
Yeah.
But now it's the understanding that like I was saying, they meant it for evil, but God made it for good. And it's just so I just look at it that way. Because there's no way I'm the only person ever that's maybe has this had to them.
Right.
Um, you know.
Right. Yeah, for sure, man. And
Yeah,
like you said, Romans 8:28, that God will work all things out for the good for those who love him.
yeah,
And
yeah, definitely.
whatever this is, um, whether it was intended to be a curse or if it was intended to be used for nefarious reasons,
Yeah,
this ability that you have, God could use that for his army.
yeah.
You know, if have you ever asked God to take it away from you?
Oh, all
Like,
the time.
yeah,
All the time. Yeah, all the time. Never happened.
okay,
It actually, there's times where I was like, I don't want this, take it away. I was cursing God,
yeah,
like, take this. I don't want this. I
yeah,
hate, especially after I had uh, a dream about a friend of mine dying, and it actually like experiencing it.
right.
It's
I'm sorry, man.
yeah, but experiencing that and then feeling the pain and feeling that last breath come out of them that you're experiencing and you wake up from a deep sleep, um it's horrifying. If
Yeah,
anything, it's horrifying. And and that person was a very, very, very close friend of mine. Like we lived in the same neighborhood. And but when I was doing that with God, I was in college when I was saying that, Bible college actually, and I literally heard a voice said no. And instead of embracing what I should have done was embrace it and have faith, I drank.
yeah,
I
yeah.
was drinking. I was drinking in Bible college. I was hammered going to Bible classes, completely hammered. Um, it's shameful, I have to say. I'm ashamed of it, but um,
That's a tough age, man. And I'm not making excuses, but that's a tough age, and to feel completely alone and try to figure this stuff out.
well, it was, and I think they knew stuff was going on with me at college. They like, well, maybe you should go see the counselor. And I sat down with the counselor, and she's like, well, what's going on? And I'm like, I didn't tell her the supernatural end of it because I knew that was not going to go over well because I've had that experience before.
Yeah,
But I told her that, yeah, I'm 19. I've lost 23 friends, you know, and I've never been in combat.
right,
And I said my grandmother was murdered by her own son, my uncle, brutally murdered. Um, different things like that. And she was just like, she didn't know what to do. She was
right.
flabbergasted, which most people usually are.
Yeah,
And she's like, and I said, well, I know what you're going to tell me, and it's okay. I said, you're just going to tell me you're going to pray for me. That's fine. I know you don't know what to say. Most people don't. And I
yeah,
said, don't worry about it. I just got up and walked out. And I didn't get any help. No teachers came to me or talked to me about it. They didn't know what to say. They never experienced anything like that, you know.
right.
Even some of the guys that were there at Bible college that seen combat. I mean, some of them lost their friends, but like it's different. Like, not they expected that
Right.
kind of stuff to happen. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, you it's like being a cop, you might not come home,
Right.
but when you're just a teenager and you're 18 years old and you lost 23 friends, everything from, murders to suicides to overdoses to car crashes, and then, you're only 18, you've been to two funerals, sometimes three funerals a year, from, from the age of 9. That's tough.
It is. Yeah. That
So,
that would be hard to understand. It is hard to understand,
yeah,
you know?
yeah. But but I kind of lighten the mood. That same church before it collapsed in the sinkhole. We were in there one other time, me and my wife, and there was a couple there that the is it the wife? The wife spoke in tongues and her husband translated. And I've been to a few Pentecostal churches and or non-denominational where people did that. And that I have to say that was the first time I've ever felt truly moved by the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Like it felt like the entire church was filled. And it was the first time in that church. I wouldn't say the first time, but the first time I ever truly felt that.
Yeah. I love that feeling.
And not see things running around in the church. Like
Yeah.
nothing was there. And my wife was like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I actually feel good. I feel amazing." And I said, "But I'm afraid." She goes, "What do you mean?" I said, "God's here. You know that, right? Like this is just like there was that the only way I can explain it is like I just perceive it or think about it is when Moses was talking to the burning bush.
Yeah,
Like
man.
just that whole just aura of being afraid, but there was a calm, safe feeling. Like there was power there, but you were safe. It's like um no, it's like being with your dad. Like your dad like can really lay down the law on you,
Right.
but there's those times when like you get that hug and you're like nothing's gonna hurt me today.
Yeah, man.
That's exactly what it felt like in that church, and I never felt like that before through somebody speaking in tongues, and I was just like, wow, that's a real thing. Like that was the moment that I changed my thought on it. And I was like, that is a real thing. That's legitimate. That is not
Absolutely.
whatever, like when I was taught like independent Baptist, like, oh, that's just people are just showing off. And
Right.
maybe people are, but like when I felt that in there, I was like, that is legitimate. Like that person is really channeling God. And I
Yeah.
I can't explain it, because I've been in churches when people were doing it. I didn't feel anything.
Right.
Like I didn't feel moved. I didn't feel like there was anything going on, you know. And then I felt like with that woman, when things were running around in the church, and I knew that, like, the absence of God was out of the church. Like it was like a vacuum. It was just sucked out, you know. And then the moment when that woman stopped, it just like it went normal.
Right. Yeah,
Um,
man. Yeah. I've
but
been
that,
around, I've never spoken in tongues personally,
yeah,
but I go to a non-denominational church and my pastor, he'll speak in tongues sometimes, like in prayer. Like you can hear him. He's not real, he don't try to like give a sermon in tongues or anything wild like that, you know. I'll just hear him praying, he's speaking. Um, but I've been actually we had a guest preacher. We had a service and we had an evangelist. He came in and he spoke like a prophecy over me and my wife, and he did it in tongues, and then he interpreted. And I don't know how people feel about that, but it felt very legit. You know
yeah,
what I mean? And the message he had felt very legit, and we didn't understand it. at all what he was talking about
Wow.
for like probably 2 years. We didn't understand what he was talking about, and now we're living in it, what he's talking about. And
Wow.
it's
That's awesome. That's
yeah,
amazing.
man. Yeah,
Yeah, like those
I love to feel
instances.
the yeah, man.
Yeah.
Just the Lord moves how He wants to move, and we got to understand His ways are not our ways. You know,
No.
His ways are higher, and we just
Yeah.
that's where faith comes in, man.
Oh yeah. It definitely is. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I don't I and I never really talked about a lot of this stuff. Like, I talked a little bit with my wife, like, because it's kind of hard to hide it when things are happening in your house or in your apartment.
Yeah,
And she's like, "What the heck is that?" And I'm like, "Oh, that's just my gifts acting up again. I'm sorry." Like, that's just how I just got with it. Like, it was
right.
just like, "Oh, this just they're flaring up. It's becoming like usually around Halloween is usually the worst."
Really.
Oh, yeah. The closest it gets to Halloween, the worst it gets. So I everything from being touched to shoved, being attacked, hearing things, my kids
Hmm,
being scared. I think my daughter has my gift.
really.
Because no, well, yeah, actually, I almost forgot about that. That was 3 weeks ago. I was getting him ready for bed, and the hallway light was off because we're trying to put our youngest one to sleep. My wife's with him in the living room, and I usually have their bedroom light on so you can just go right in. When she got done brushing her teeth and doing everything, I brushed her hair and everything. And I had my oldest son. He was in there. I was getting him finished, and she walks in the hallway and she lets out. If you're a parent, you hear that scream that your kid does, and whatever it is, you got to get there.
Yeah.
And she took off and jumped in her bed, and she was shaking, physically shaking. She was that scared. And I was like, "What is wrong? What happened?" She goes, "I saw it." I'm like, "What did you see?" And she goes, "I saw it." And I'm like, "What?" She goes, I was like, "What did it look like?" And she said, "It's like this." And I was like, "What do you mean?" She goes, the door opened. The two doors open. I'm like, "What do you mean the two doors open?" She goes, "The two doors opened and it came through and it tried to grab me, Dad."
Mm-mm.
And I'm like, "What?" And she goes, "It came through." And I was like, "Okay, well, we're gonna pray. We're gonna tell it to leave, okay? We're gonna pray and we're gonna tell it to leave." And she was shaken. She took a long time for her to go to sleep that night.
Yeah, no
But
doubt.
I think she saw what I saw that night, the weeks before. And I think it came through an opening it made into our home.
Yeah,
And yeah. So I mean, I think she has what I have. I think she does because she's always kind of had that kind of stuff where um we'd be playing or something like that, and she would point to, like, we had like a little tent, like a little teepee in the living room, and she goes, "It's in there." I'm like, "What's in there?" She goes, "It's in there." And I'm like, "Well, show me." And I go over there, and I wouldn't really see anything, and then all of a sudden I would see a shadow move,
mm,
and it was hiding inside. And I'm like, "You see that?" She goes, "Yeah, I see that." I'm like, "Okay." I said, "Let's pray." We pray, and I tell it to get out, and it would. Those are the things where it gone. See ya.
right,
It just get out. Never had a problem with it. Um, so she sees things too, and she tells me about. Sometimes even at night, she just wakes up, comes, and there's a monster in my room. I'm like, "All right, let's go pray." Go in there and we do our thing, and then whatever it is, it's usually a shadow. It's usually a shadow person, and then we'll push it out, and you could see it leave and like walk through the wall or go through the window, or it just just completely vanishes.
right. Now,
Um,
is there anything that you think like why do you think it has permission to get in there?
I have no idea. And here's the other thing. I have blessed scripture on all my doors
Yeah.
into my house. And have that when I had those up, I never the shadow people stopped coming in, so they never would come in. So it was like really, but around Halloween, I would see things kind of running in around our house, and I'd have to tell it to leave.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, like one time, my wife was holding our youngest, and I forget what I was doing. I was in the kitchen. I think I was making coffee or something, and I turned around and I saw a hand come out of the sofa trying to grab my wife's hair,
Mm-mm.
and I looked at it. I said, "Get the hell out of here!"
Yeah.
And then the hand just disappeared.
Dude,
And
I
she's like, "Who are you talking to?" I said, "A hand almost grabbed you, baby."
see, dude, I'd be slinging anointing oil. I'd be slinging Psalms 91 at that day. Uh,
But the fun,
fighting with the name
but
of
I want to
Jesus.
say funny, but that's a daily thing in my life. I've always dealt with that.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's just very different for me. Like, um, so like, I see those things a lot. Like I see shadows running around or popping up in and out. Like there's times when I've gone hunting and I'm like, today is not the day. I'm
Right.
just gonna, I'm gonna go to the diner and get a cup of coffee.
Yeah, man. Yeah, for sure.
There's been times like that where I've done that.
Yeah, man. I don't know how. I don't know, dude. We've had stuff in, on, and around us in the house. Uh, I don't know how many episodes of the show you've listened to, but this a couple of years ago, this house went through a really, really dark time. Um, Super dark, and it got to where I had to go through deliverance. I did it on myself, and I talked to. I don't know if you know who Dark Waters is, but he's got a, really big YouTube channel, and I had him on the show a few years ago, and we were we were talking about stuff off air, and he was like, "Here's what you need to do," and he walked me through how to do like a self deliverance,
Yeah.
so just to renounce things in the name of Jesus, to cut ties with whatever, to confess everything to the Lord, rebuke it, renounce it, turn away from it, and it was a big battle here for a long time, man. But you know, by the grace of God, it stopped. And there
Yeah.
has been that every once in a while I've had to go through and cleanse the house again, and
Yeah.
I think that's in part because of this show. You know,
Probably. Yeah.
um, there's been several times where I think something come through.
Yeah.
Uh, I don't know. Maybe I forgot to pray, or maybe whoever I was talking to had ulterior motives, even.
Right.
But yeah, it's why I there's a there's another guy named L.A. Marzulli. He said, "When in doubt, cast it out." So
Yeah.
I use the name of Jesus because he has the authority.
Yeah. Oh
He
yeah.
gave us the authority, and so if it is a generational curse that's been put out toward you that you've had to endure, you
Yeah.
know, um, I'd renounce it, man.
Oh,
Uh,
I definitely I went through I was listening to one podcast and they talked about all the prayers you can say to do self-deliverance like you're talking about um generational Mason bloodline, like
yeah,
Mason stuff and
yeah,
all that stuff. So I went through all those prayers. I have it saved on my phone because sometimes I just do it.
amen.
And I did all that and it definitely helped. I feel like it helped a
Absolutely,
lot. And
absolutely.
then praying every night. I prayed every night over my kids. And I even tell that's the other thing, um I'm afraid that because the dreams I've had come true, I feel like there may be or like astral projection. Like I'm really afraid of that.
Yeah,
Like I'm gonna end up somewhere that I don't need to be. Um, and so recently I've been asking God to, if I'm somewhere I don't need to be, wake me up.
good.
And um, like just last week that happened to me. I was sleeping and I heard somebody say, "Christopher, get up." And I woke up and I thought it was my wife like calling for help or something. And I fell asleep in the living room. It's just kind of normal. And so I walked in there and she was dead asleep. And I'm like, well, that's weird. I knew I heard my name. Somebody used my full Christian name, like something was
Yeah.
wrong. So I was like, well, but whatever. Maybe it's just, and I went back to sleep and it happened again. It happened the entire night. And what the crazy thing is, I was not exhausted the following morning. I was like, I didn't even have my coffee and I was very peppy.
Yeah.
So, and I was just like, I told my wife and I was like, hey, did you, are you starting to pray that if we get somewhere in our dreams that I need to wake up? And she's like, well, yeah, I've been doing it. I said, well, I did it last night and I woke up like 6 times hearing my name being called out, telling me to get up.
Wow.
And I said, I thought it was you. You didn't call my name. She goes, no. She goes, for once, I slept all night with the baby. So that was fine. And I was just like, okay, so definitely wasn't you. And I was like, maybe it was God. Maybe it was God was telling me to get up.
Yeah, man.
And like, those are the kind of things that like, it's just so wild. It's just, um, and then like, and here's another thing, like with when I was adopted, I went back to Chile for a missions trip
Oh, wow.
and I was 17, it was 2003. I went back to Chile for a missions trip and the was really cool. The missionary that we stayed with, he's actually in the next town over and we're still good friends and it's just amazing. He's like a big brother.
Yeah.
And but anyway, he was asking me, he was like, hey, do you want to try to find your family? And I was like, well, I want to focus on my missions trip. So I said, I'm kind of throwing the wool out. I'm going to do it the last day I'm fully here.
Yeah.
I'll do it in the morning because then our plane doesn't leave the following evening. I said, if it happens, it happens. I said, but I don't want that to be my focus on my mission trip. My focus is to help your church with fixing things.
All right.
And he was like, okay, bet. And so we had our last full day there in Chile, and I turned in my paperwork to for missing persons, like to connect with somebody. And I put it in at like 8 in the morning. By 11 o'clock, they called back and they were like, "Hey, we found your family," which that doesn't happen in Chile. That doesn't. If anybody knows anything about Latin culture, they're usually pretty relaxed on stuff. So it usually does not happen that quickly.
Yeah.
Um, but I didn't know this. This is the crazy thing, but I didn't know this until this happened. My last name, Youssef, my Chilean last name, Youssef, that I got from my grandfather. There's only 3 women in the entire country of Chile with that last name. My
Really?
mom, my mom, my aunt, and my grandmother, my abuela. They're the only 3 women in the entire country of Chile with that last name. I don't find that as a coincidence. I felt that God did that on purpose.
Yeah, man.
And so that evening was the first time I met my mom that I remembered ever.
Yeah.
So I was 17 and so that was another great, and you can't chalk it up to like, a coincidence. God did that. He
Yeah,
knew
man.
that I was meant to find her,
Yeah.
and my grandfather planned it that like I don't know if he planned it, but he kind of did, like we were talking about before.
Yeah.
Because he gave me like my full Chilean name was Carlos Antonio Ortega Yosef. So the Carlos Antonio was my great grandfather's name. So he named me after him.
Wow.
And if you're anybody who's listening, if you're Latin or anything like that, that's like a big thing
Yeah.
to be named after a family member, especially a grandfather or a male figure. That's huge.
Yeah.
Um, so and I kind of did the favor too. Back my daughter, she's named after she's fifth generation with the name Oriana. So
It's beautiful.
yeah, so she's fourth or fifth generation with that name. So
Man, and I bet you that your biological mom was proud of you to see you on a missions trip. Like,
oh,
not only
and
are you
she
doing well, you're
well that was
you're a
the funny
Christian
thing.
man.
Yeah, that was the funny thing. Like when the police showed up at my grandmother's house, and they're like, "We're looking for there's an American that wants to talk to you." And my grandmother is like, "What are you talking about? We don't know any Americans." And the first thing my mom said was like, is it George W. Bush? So that's the first thing she said. And my aunt actually thought she had twins because me and my cousin are only a month apart. And my family did not know that I even existed. Get this, 3 months prior, they didn't know I existed
Wow.
because my mom was pregnant. She was married and she got pregnant and she gave birth to my youngest brother. And while he was in the NICU, she was beside herself, obviously. And she says, "Please, Lord, don't take another son."
Amen.
And the whole family heard it. And they're like, "What are you talking about, another son?" And my abuela told everybody, "You didn't hear that. There is no other son. You don't know what you're talking about." And they're like, "No, no, we heard her. What do you mean?" And they finally found out that I even existed in May. And then I show up in July of that same year.
Yeah,
Like
that's
three
God,
months.
man.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. 3 months later, I show up and they're like, and then like the whole family met me. Some not so open arms because it was very shocking. I mean, just 3 months ago, they even found that I existed.
Right.
And then,
All of a
um,
sudden you're there.
then
Yeah.
all of a sudden I'm there. I'm 17. I'm technically a man in that culture.
Yeah.
Um, and then I also kind of look like my grandfather, like their dad. I look like him. I'm just
Right.
much bigger. Um, so it was quite a shock for everybody. I mean,
I
and
bet.
but unfortunately, my grandmother never accepted me. So I kind of knew that could have happened,
Yeah.
but because you don't know. I mean, I didn't know if I was gonna like, oh no, I don't want to meet him. I gave him up for a reason. I don't want him. You just don't know.
Right.
So, but that's the opposite. I mean, you know, so we talk weekly, me and my mother and my brother. So it's crazy. He's turning 22, my brother. So,
That's
that's,
awesome.
yeah,
That's great, man.
yeah.
That is great.
But,
Thank the Lord.
yeah. But even when I was in Chile, I was experiencing things I didn't. So things running around and, different things like that, like different, there's there's a hill in Santiago in the capital. That's where I was from. My family's all over there. And it was during the conquistadors when they were there trying to take over the Mapuche Indians there, Mapuche natives. And they made this hill. They built things where stairs would go into nothing. So they would murder them. They
Right.
put their heads on pikes and everything. And I remember when I was there, it was just very eerie, very and I was seeing things.
Yeah.
So, and I was just like, well, it's acting up again, so that's normal. And I just kind of just shrugged it off and just, we, kind of did our thing and like we evangelized and worked at the church, helped repair some things, and then, of course, eat Chilean food, which was awesome. So,
Bet.
you know, and kind of and kind of like experiencing. It was weird. I thought I was gonna go there and I was gonna look like everybody, and I didn't. That was weird because I was taller than everybody,
Right.
so I kind of stuck out. And a lot of people thought I was indigenous. They thought I was Mupacha. They were calling me that when I was walking around in the city, which I didn't know that was kind of like a derogatory thing at the
Oh,
time.
really?
I didn't know that. Um, Very class system
Okay.
there.
Yeah.
So I didn't know that, but it was kind of funny because I went back there in 2005 to see my mom, and it's the winter time there in the summertime. So I had like a military jacket, and I was wearing boots, and we were taking the subway, and we're walking down, and then all of a sudden, when I was walking through, I had a little Metro card and scanned it. And when I was walking through, people were literally splitting away from me. And I'm like, what in the world is all this about? Like, I grew up in the city, and that doesn't happen. You usually just kind of have to like maneuver your way through.
Right.
And my mom, she tells me, she's like, oh, they think you're a Cabanero. And I'm like, what do you mean? They think I'm police? She's like, well, look at you. You're huge and you're wearing a military green jacket. They think you're a cop. Of course they're going to think. She says, that's why everybody's moving. This is fantastic. She goes, I don't have to push my way through.
Police escort.
Yeah.
That's
So,
pretty cool, man.
yeah. And I was like walking around, and like, in Chile, it's different. So, like, you're like walking through, and there's, guys with Israeli Uzis and stuff like that, everywhere, So, like, they're like, give me a nod. And I'm like, oh, hey. And I didn't realize that they thought I was like military. They really
Yeah,
did, and I didn't have a beard then. I didn't shave until I was like almost 23. So then all of a sudden I got a beard.
it worked out.
But yeah, so I was kind of funny, kind of a funny story in Chile and stuff like that. So, but yeah, and then finding out her abilities also, that was interesting. Talking with her, and she has the same ability with foreseeing people's deaths. That's her gift,
Wow.
and they always come true. So, and it's always somebody she knows, or maybe she met for the first time at a party or whatever, and then that would happen, and then
Mm.
you know a few weeks or maybe a month or two later, that person would pass away in the exact way that she'd foreseen it. So, you know,
Wow. Yeah, I could see how Masons or anybody in the occult would want that,
yeah.
because to be a medium or something
Hmm.
to that effect, and it just I thank the Lord that you didn't go that route, man.
No, well, that's the thing. Like thinking about it and looking at it, like like what my mom Linda did, which set the curse, and having me around that, like the tarot cards and the
Yeah.
seances and all that stuff. And then like it was trying, like
Oh
looking back
yeah.
on it, like it was trying to get me. It was trying to grab me to pull me into that.
Yeah.
Um, and then it never did. Like it was never truly like there's times I'll admit I've walked away from Christ,
Yeah.
and but I never was like, oh, I'm gonna go this route. I'm gonna go totally wild and go over here.
Right.
Um, Mostly because it just scared the hell out of me. I mean,
Yeah, man.
seeing these things all the time, like, and then you kind of get normal with it. And um, like, even when I worked at places and I worked night shift, because I always work night shift because one, I'm a night owl, and two, I usually work alone, so I kind of like that,
Yeah.
kind of being like my own boss, kind of, sort of.
Yeah.
And I was working security at a place called the Jacksonville Landing in Jacksonville. I don't know if you ever heard of it. Um, but it was just basically like a huge mall, but it was like there's an outdoor venue where they did like shows and rock concerts and all different kinds of things. And there was like restaurants and like clubs and bars and things. Like it was just like a one-stop venue for anything you could think of there. And then they have like specialty shops throughout the mall.
Yeah.
Um, but I remember one time I was working night shift, and like I saw everything from shadows to a Native American girl wanting to play tag with me. Um, and one time I was actually with somebody and I was training them. They were like, "Oh, we're gonna have two people work night shift. Like you do inside, one guy does outside, and then the following hour you switch." And so I was training him, and he called me on the radio. And I didn't tell him that I saw stuff. I never did any of that. And he's like, "Hey, are you inside?" And I'm like, "No, I'm outside. I'm on the breezeway. Why?" He's like, "There's something running around in here. I can hear footsteps."
Mm.
And I was like, did you hear giggling? And he was like, why did you say that? I was like, well, did you? He goes, yeah. I said, oh, it's just the Indian girl. Don't mind her. Leave her alone. Whatever you do, don't follow her. Just leave her alone. Do your
Wow.
job. I said, do your job. He's like, okay, I don't know what you mean by that, but okay, fine. Um, and, and like I just that's just how that's how I am. Like, oh, just don't interact with it.
Yep.
Don't follow it. Just hit your sensors where you're supposed to go and then, do your job. That's it. I said, I'll meet you in the office in 30 minutes. So, and finally met him and he goes, how'd you know it was that? I said, oh, well, she always does that with me when I'm working here. Like she'll just run a little bit and then kind of like peek around from a doorway and you'll hear a giggle and it will run down the hallway. And I'm like, oh, that doesn't feel right. So I'm not going to chase that little girl.
Yep. Because you know they ain't no little girl.
Right, exactly. So, and he
Yeah,
was just
man.
like, he's like, oh, how long's that been happening? I said, I don't know, a few weeks now. He's like, did anybody else talk about that? I said, nah, it's just something that happens to me. Don't worry about it. I said, when I'm not working here, it probably won't happen to you. So don't worry
Yeah.
about it. So, and then
Wow.
like he called me, he's like, yeah, it didn't happen when you're not working here. I said, I know. They come to me. I don't know what it is. They just come to me.
Yeah.
They seek me out. And I said, I said, don't worry about it. And then one other night when I was being trained to take overnight shift, we were in the office. We just did our rounds. We are sitting in there and we have it's called a trespass camera. So we take like a mug shot of somebody. We keep it in things that are trespassed for a year. Some of the pictures are really great. Some of them are not so great. Um, and one night we're just sitting there and there was one, there was one photo left in there and we took it. And he's like, we had the door open that led into our lunchroom area. And he's like, you want to take this picture? I'm like, why do I want to take this picture? It's one left. He goes, yeah, there's one left, and we'll just whatever. We'll reload it. I'm like, all right, fine, give it to me. So I pointed it through the doorway into the lunch area, and I took a picture. I took it out, sat it down, reloaded it, and he was like, what's on the picture? And I'm like, what would be on the picture other than chairs and tables? And I looked at it, and there was a black mass in the doorway. And he was just like, take another picture. And I'm like, no, I don't want to take another picture. He's like, well, fine, I'll take it. And he took it and it went from the doorway and it was literally right in front of the camera. And he's like, okay, let's get out of here.
Yeah, man.
And we left. And we walked out. We didn't go back to the office the entire shift. We didn't go back there the entire shift, even though it was sweltering hot.
Yeah.
We just did it. We just hid in the cafeteria. We hid in the upstairs food court. We just hid up there. That was all we did.
I don't blame you, man.
So, but I mean, like all those kinds of things have always happened to me. It's always been drawn to me, and I see them, hear them. Sometimes, I get pushed, I get touched, or like sometimes things will go missing in my house. That used to happen a lot. Things would just go missing and then reappear. You
Do
know,
you do you think that, and because from the jump, man, like you sent me that email, you said it was a gift. I'm like, I don't know if that's a gift, but obviously, like you say, the Lord will work it out for the good. Do
yep.
you think that He allows you to be exposed to this stuff? Um, Maybe so you have a deeper understanding of the spiritual world. Like so you understand the reality of things, so you could be a help to others.
Yeah, yeah, I would say so because like however that thing got in my house.
Right.
And I'd look at it like because I was thinking like, how did that thing get in my house? My doors are blessed with scripture, literal written scripture in Hebrew on my doors.
Yeah.
I've never had any issues. Around Halloween, some things would like it was just so built up. Um, but nothing ever this intense, especially in my home.
Yeah.
And then I got to thinking, I was like, well, what if I was supposed to do that to cast it out, knowing my faith in God?
Yeah.
I mean, what else other to explain it than that? I mean, God allowed it to happen, but I also know he's going to protect me. And God forbid, let's just say the thing took my life.
Right.
I mean, that's horrible to think about. I mean, I don't want that to happen. I want to see my kids grow up.
Yeah, absolutely.
But at the same time, I mean, that's if it happens, it happens, I guess. I
Yeah.
mean, it's just one of those things I just come to terms with. I mean, I could fall out of a tree stand next deer
Right.
season. So, I
Yeah.
mean, but I mean, it's just kind of how I look at it. Like, I knew, like, I had two choices at that moment was either to really have my faith in God and go in there and fight, like, spiritually fight this thing, or simply I could have not have enough faith and that thing could have ran rampant in my home.
Yeah,
And God
man.
knows what could have happened. It could have it attached itself to my kids. It could have gone after my wife. It could have made me sick.
Yeah.
And that was the other thing. When I was 6 years old, when that thing happened and my mom was doing that stuff, that curse, I was severely sick from 6 years old till like almost in college. Like
Really.
severe, like every time um I would get bronchitis, walking pneumonia, uh like anything at all. Do you think strep throat? Like I was getting it. I got Lyme's disease. I got injured in football, lost my scholarship. It wasn't like a big D1 school. It was like a Division 3, but they're like, well, you're hurt now. You can't play. You're basically almost a cripple.
All right.
Um, like those kind of things. Like something every single year, something was happening. A friend would die, multiple friends would die, murdered, unsolved murders,
Hmm.
ODs, drunk driving stuff. Um,
Like you're
or
surrounded by it, but God just,
yeah, it was constant, just over and over and every year. And my mom
yeah,
was like, she was actually getting concerned. She was just like, I never met somebody your age who just went nonchalant to funerals for your friends. And you're like, well, my suit's getting worn out. I gotta get a new funeral suit. Like that's what I said once. I was like 17. I was like, I got my funeral suit's getting worn out. I need to get a new one.
yeah, man.
Um, so that just yeah. I mean, that was just the life that I had, and looking back on it, it's just I don't know. I just look at it. I think I just try to because if I dwell on it and be like, oh, woe is me, like I did when I was in college, I'm not going to be able to serve the Lord
Right.
and I'll turn to drinking
Yep.
or I'll become a miserable person,
Yep.
you know, like, yeah, those things happen and that's horrible, you know, um, but at the same time, it's, you know, no one goes through life unscathed,
That's it, man.
so
It's a
it,
war, you know?
it
It is a
is,
war.
it really is. So, I mean, if you look at, I'm not trying to be like ultra macho or anything like that, but if I don't look at it in that kind of perspective, I will be run down. I will be depressed, and I'll
Yeah,
I'll
man.
turn to drinking big time. That's what I did. I drank so much that I actually went to the hospital because I thought my appendix bursted.
Yeah.
And what happened was I drank bad alcohol because I was hiding it. It's kind of funny, but not really. Um, I would buy these old bottles from like Goodwill, and then I'd pour the alcohol in there, and I would put a fancy lampshade on it. And
Yeah.
so when people would walk in my room, they're like, "Oh, that's a weird kind of crazy looking lamp you got there." I'm like, "Yeah, thanks, man." And like even the dean like walked in my room one time and he saw that. He's like,
Uh,
"Ah, it's an interesting lamp." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, it really is. It's pretty cool." And then he never realized that I was drinking, like it was full of liquor,
right.
like, you know, and I mean, I drank so much so often that I was hurting my liver. Like I was killing my liver at
Yeah, man.
like 19,
Yeah.
because I was super depressed and I didn't feel like I could talk to anybody. No one understood anything. And then the people I did talk to, they didn't know what to say, or they would just be like, well, I'm going to pray for you. Hopefully everything works out. And then I never hear from them again,
Yep.
you know.
Yep. I can't stand that. That that's a whole other topic.
Yeah.
But yeah,
But
man.
yeah,
I'm
it put a sour taste in my mouth for not Christianity, but people who said
people.
they were Christians,
Yeah.
And and so I just, at that time when I left Bible college, I just stopped going to church. I stopped going, and then I didn't really lose my faith, but I think I just lost my faith in people in the church.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
for sure.
and I think that was just another tool that it was using against me.
Yeah.
Like, what better way to keep you out of church to make you think that there's no good people in church, where they're all hypocrites,
Right.
or they don't really care about people per se. They say they do, but they really don't,
Yeah.
you know.
That's a very American problem, I think, man. Um,
Hmm.
it's it's lukewarm Christians is what it is.
Yeah.
They might sit in a pew, but that doesn't make them a
Right. It's that
disciple of
it's
Christ,
it's that being religious aspect. Like,
Yeah,
you're
man.
religious, but you're not caring.
Yeah. And that hurts because churches, like, I went through very many years and I was on the bottle too. I was a drunk for probably 15 years, but I gave my life to the Lord when I was 20. And then I went the way of the world when I was like 22.
Yeah.
And I spent, like I said, about 15 years where I drank pretty much every day.
Yeah.
And I thought, I love the Lord, but I didn't need church,
Yeah.
you know, that, but after you find the right place,
Yeah.
a real Bible teaching, Jesus loving church, you can look back and think, man, I'm surprised I made it this far. I'm
Yeah.
surprised I lived to see this day because it's just like it's a part of your life. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
It's such a valuable part of being a Christian is having the assembly. Um, well, man, I'm glad you endured. I'm glad that you've been fighting the good fight of faith, and you're there for your daughter because if she sees this stuff, she's got daddy. She's got
Yeah.
dad that knows it. He understands it, and you can be that somebody she can lean on and talk to, and your boys too, of course. But
Yeah.
it's just that's a special thing, man, and I'm very grateful that you're as strong as you are.
I guess. Yeah. I try. I
Yeah,
mean,
man. Yeah,
but yeah, I mean, yeah, there's just endless stories that I have in encounters and different things, and just like all that. I mean, everything from um like one time right after I talked to that pastor about that, what was going to happen to his church. And me and my wife, we went in town. We went to the local grocery store to Winn-Dixie, and I literally got attacked inside Winn-Dixie.
what happened?
And I, first of all, I saw the woman was in the grocery store. She was there. And I was like, oh, there she is. I'm like, oh, okay. And and then all of a sudden I felt like something came behind me,
Mm.
and I was looking over my shoulder, and I'll say I'm always carrying.
Oh yeah,
That's
yeah,
just
for
how I
sure.
am. And so, and also being, you know, kind of the, you know, what's the word? Um, Typical Latino. I always have multiple knives on me. So it's just, I have my firearm and I have like three or four knives on me. That's just how I am. So I'm looking over my shoulder and she's like, what's wrong? I said, something's behind me. You see anything? And she turns around. She goes, no, nothing's behind you. I said, something is behind me. And I said, I don't know what it is. And she was like, well, what is it? And I'm like, I don't know, but it's not good. Something's coming. And I said that. And as soon as I said that, I buckled to my knees.
Mm.
And and she was like, are you okay? And I'm like, something's got me. That's what I said. I said, something's got me. And my nose was bleeding, like blood was coming out of my nose. And she's like, "Are you okay?" I said, "No, I don't know what's going on, but something's in me." And
Mm.
she was just like, "What are we going to do?" And I was like, pray, I guess. I don't know. I can't shoot it.
Right.
So, you know, and so she picks me up and she's like, "Let's just go." And I was like, "Okay." And I'm telling it to get away and go away and get off of me, get outside of me, whatever you are, get away from me. And then we get back to my truck and she's like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "I need a nap. I don't know what that was." I
Yeah.
said, "That was something attacked me and that's never happened before."
Uh,
And
that woman that was in there, she's the lady from the church?
same woman.
Man.
She
Okay.
was in she it's a small town that I live in.
Yeah.
And there's only like two places where you can grocery shop. So she was there, it's how it is.
Yeah.
And I think whatever it was on her came and attacked me because I told the pastor about what was happening.
Yeah. That's I love to say this, to my family and stuff. Is the spirit in you didn't agree with the spirit in her. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's like boom, that conflict right there in a grocery store, man.
yeah,
Uh it's like it never stops.
no,
But man, I love to know that we're fighting from a place of victory, dude.
yeah.
You know?
Oh yeah. I mean it's gonna happen. I mean,
Yeah.
when Christ comes back, he's gonna pull the sword out of his mouth, man. And that's like I saw that and I was like, I gotta get that tattoo on me. Like
Yeah, man.
that's what I want. And like, that's definitely one because I've always been wanting to get one.
Yeah.
And it's just nothing's ever really felt promising. And then when I saw that, I'm like, the sword out of his mouth to strike down with his truth and wisdom. That's gonna be amazing. That's gonna be
Amen.
really, really wild.
Amen.
And
Yeah, I'm covered in tattoos, man, but I'm a vet. You know what I mean? That's
yeah,
my excuse. And
yeah,
most of them I would probably remove or replace. But over it's like the end of summer, my buddy and I we went to we drive Jeeps and there was a Jeep show and they had this grand prize was a $500 tattoo session. And we uh we organized a real quick or we're in a Jeep club. We're going to call it the Holy Rollers and we're going to show up. We made t-shirts, it's just a two-person club, it's me and
yeah,
but we go in there like we're clean sweeping these prizes, and people's getting aggravated and we're like, oh, we're blessed and highly favored, just
yeah,
rubbing it in a little bit, just having a good time. Well, he wins the grand prize. He won this $500 tattoo, and he's like, whoever wins, we agreed. Whoever wins, we're going to split that prize money. We're going to go get tattoos together,
yeah,
and we're going to take our wives, and we all paid like $125 toward the tattoo. I think it was. It might have been a $400 tattoo, whatever it was. It was like
yeah,
125 bucks, something like that. And so after like 12 years, I get back, to getting a tattoo, and I wanted it to be something for the Lord.
yeah,
So on my wrists, I have to live as Christ on one wrist and to die as gain on the other,
yeah,
because I just think that's how we're supposed to live, man.
yeah,
But yeah,
definitely.
yeah, man, I love it. So yeah, you got a good idea. It's a Jesus coming back.
Yeah,
That's the hardest. That's the most manly. That's like the most. I don't want to. The word that comes to mind. That's the toughest thing you could get. You know what I mean?
yeah.
It's like
I saw it on it was because we do Sunday morning church here at our house
yeah,
because it's hard sometimes with our son like going
yeah.
to new places and stuff.
That's
So
fantastic.
they were doing the whole thing of Revelation, going through the entire Revelation,
Yep.
and they had these artwork showing up, and it showed like almost kind of a very middle age Renaissance of like Jesus taking the sword out of his mouth, and I was just like, that's the tattoo I want.
That's
That's
cool.
that's sweet.
Yeah.
And my wife's like, really? And I'm like, yeah. I said, but it's gonna be like total like medieval Renaissance, like
Yep.
definitely like that.
That's the
I said,
one,
that's what
man.
I'm getting. That's the one.
That's awesome.
So, but yeah, it's just and yeah, I really just feel that it's like, like you asked me, I asked to have this stuff take away from me. Like I didn't want it. Like I had another friend when I met in working at a Christian camp. He would see him too. He would see demons, and that was really weird working together. We would see him,
Yeah.
and like we would see him like influencing our campers,
Wow.
like our kids. Like we would see like when we like Friday night they had like testimony and like kids rededicated themselves to Christ and stuff like that. We're sitting there in the dark with with the campfire, and they had like tiki torches and stuff so we can see and everything. So it's like really very, very moving and great. And we're sitting there and he goes, "You see that?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I see that one." He's like, "You see that one?" I'm like, "Yeah, you see that one?" He goes, "Yeah, I see that one too."
Wow.
And they're literally like leaning over these kids and whispering in our ears, telling them, "Don't go up. You don't want to be a Christian."
Yeah.
You could see it. And the wild thing is like when they know you see them, they look right at you, and you're like, "I see you. I see you." You know. But with
Man,
him, he asked for his to be taken away, and it was.
was it?
Yeah. And he's like, he just couldn't do it anymore.
Yep.
Um, and I was just like, "You just did it and it just happened." He goes, "Yeah." He's like, "Maybe you should try it." I was like, "Dude, I've been trying. It
Yeah.
definitely, I've been told no.
Right.
Like, I've been told, no, you're not going to have this taken away from you."
Well, God's
Um,
got a plan for you, brother.
yeah. And I think the first experience my wife had with me is when we went to Cherokee, North Carolina. It's one of my favorite places. One, because everybody thinks I'm related to them.
Right.
So we're walking around, and it's I don't know if you've been there, like the main area where they have like kind of like the touristy area, like all the shops down the road and everything, right near the history museum of the Cherokee Nation, right there in town. So we're walking around. But this is way before we had our kids. We're actually on our honeymoon. We went there for our honeymoon, and we're walking around, and I saw a sign, elk burgers. I'm like, that's where we're going for lunch. I'm gonna
Yep.
get an elk burger. And they had bison, like like a bison food too. And I was like, that's where we're going, babe. We're going
Yeah,
there.
for sure.
So we walked down there, and as I'm walking down there, like I feel like tired, and then I felt like really emotional, like I was crying. And she's like, "What is wrong?" I said, "I don't know." I said, "But let's go get something to eat. Maybe I'm just hungry."
Right.
So we go in there, we eat and everything. And then like I'm in there, I'm just not myself. She goes, "Are you okay?" And she's like, "You like the food?" I said, "Food's great. I just don't want to be here. I'm not having fun."
Yeah.
And she's like, "What's wrong?" I said, "I have no idea. Let's just go." So we finish up, we walk, and as we're walking away, I'm feeling better. And then all of a sudden, she's like, "Well, let's go to the shop. Let's see if we get something for the nieces and nephews." So we go in there, and we got some things. And as I'm in there, I'm just feeling worse and worse and worse. I'm just feeling emotional. I'm crying. Like I feel horrible. And then all of a sudden, I'm having flashes of a potato. It's weird to think about, but the potato was like rotting and maggots were coming out of it, and it was just really just disgusting looking, like kind of like a time lapse, like just really just breaking out just everything. And I was like, I don't know what it is, but we need to go. So we went back to our cabin, and I slept. Like we got back, it was like 4. I slept the entire night until the next morning at 10. Like I was just exhausted. Like when that stuff happens to me, I get exhausted. I
Yeah.
just sleep. And she was like, "You feel better?" I said, "I feel amazing now." I said, "I don't know what that was, but something
Wow.
about rotten potatoes." She's like, "What are you talking about?" I said, "That's what I saw. It's just a potato that was just maggots and flies and disgustingness." I said, "I don't know what it is." I said, "But," and so she's like, "Well, you want to not go as far. There's a place down there for breakfast. You can get like biscuits and gravy." I'm like, "Deal, let's go." And so we get down there and we have biscuits, and I'm feeling it again. Like all of a sudden I'm feeling just tired and emotional. And then So we're done. I was like, well, let's walk back to the museum. Let's go to the museum. And as we're walking there, just these guys are performing. They're locals or Cherokee guys. And so I go up to him. I said, I said, how well do you know your history around here? And they're like, well, what do you mean? I said, something just feels off, and I don't know. I said, I think I could talk to you about it. Just feels right. And he goes, and he looks at me. He goes, were you down at the end? And I'm like, well, yeah, I was. He goes, you felt emotional? I was like, yeah. And he's like, you got the gift, don't you? And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. I was playing dumb. I was like, I
Yeah.
don't know what you're talking about. He goes, no, you do. He goes, you're like us. You're native. You have it in you, man. There's something different. And I was like, okay. I said, what? I said, what was this before all this attraction and, the casino and all that? He goes, well, this used to be a village, like pre-colonial. He says, but when the colonials came here, I said, well, what was the name of the village? He goes, he said it was called Little Potato Village.
Uh-uh.
And I was like, what? He goes, yeah, it was Little Potato Village. And he says it was wiped out by disease. Everybody died, pretty much. He says he says because they used to grow potatoes here. The village, like, that's what they did. They would trade locally with other
Yeah.
tribes, the other tribes and stuff. They grew potatoes. He says, but they went through a famine and all the potatoes went horrible and people got disease and they all died. And my wife looked at me, she goes, are you freaking kidding me? And I was just like, I had a dream. I said I saw a potato like being rotten and maggots and flies and stuff coming out of it. He goes, yeah. He goes, he says, some people have that kind of sensitivity. He says, but you really have it. He says, you know, he says, he's where are you from? I said, well, I was born in Chile. He goes, oh yeah. He says, you got something. You're
Yeah.
definitely gifted. And that's when I was just like, oh, great. Now,
Yeah.
wherever I go, it doesn't matter. And then that's when I
Yeah.
really realized it doesn't matter where I go, it always happens, um, different ways and stuff.
Well, you don't want to come to West Virginia, man. They call this the natives used to call this place the dark and bloody ground. We're
Yeah.
in this region, so you'd probably be in a little bit of a bummer of a mood if you were
It
around.
it it happens everywhere though. Like
Yeah, man.
St. Augustine, Florida, it's the oldest city. There's always weird stuff there that I
Yeah,
experience or see. It's just one of those things. It's just different for me than most people. And my wife is like, she asks me, you feeling weird?
yeah.
You feeling anything? So it's kind of like that's like what she says now. So
Man alive. That's a tough burden to bear, man, but you must be the man to do it.
I guess so. I mean,
Yeah,
you know, it's just yeah, I mean it's just I really feel like it's all connected through that stuff that happened and everything, and like being conceived on winter solstice and being born on the fall. So I was born on the day of fall solstice.
yeah,
So, I think it's just really planned out
yeah,
as best as they could. That's what I feel. It feels like the correct answer,
yeah,
like all that.
yeah. Well, there's a change of plan, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah, definitely. Yeah,
Amen, man. Well, look, I'm going to get up here for school in the morning. I teach,
yeah,
so I got to get up early, man. But I could talk to you all night long, dude. It's been so much fun. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. But before we get off here, you got some projects in the works, and you got your own show. I would love for you
yeah,
to plug
yeah.
everything you want to, man.
I appreciate that. Yeah, so it's Wild Pursuit Podcast, and it's totally different direction from this. It's actually just oral history of families of hunting and fishing and being outdoors. So it's nothing like this. It's totally different. So if you're into hunting and fishing and learning new ways of people maybe preparing food or some things you never even heard of or
Oh
hearing
yeah,
people hunting land for the last 5 generations, things like that.
yeah,
Um, check out Wild Pursuits podcast where I'm only on Spotify right now, but there's a few episodes. There's not too many on there. I have more into work, so I was telling you, man. And then if you're in Florida, I'm starting my uh thermal drone business. So I do like animal recovery and wild game, livestock, and even pets, if your pets get out and you live in the country or something, or even the city, hopefully, contact me on my it's bird dog drone services. It's on Instagram and Facebook.
All right.
And then I have a little bit the other one, it's for roof inspections and solar panels, excuse me, and then mapping and different things like that. I'm getting into just starting out. So, you know, and that, and then, and also if you ever go on, what is it? What's it called? Etsy. There you go. Thank you.
Mhm.
Etsy. You'll find the prancing bison. That's what me and my wife are trying to raise money for our bison ranch that we're
Yes.
trying to do here in Florida. It's been a dream of mine for 12 years. So we're finally wanting to do that. And we feel it's the right time to do it here in Florida and everything. So, yep, there's
Doing
that's
that.
those are all my adventures and everything that we're doing. And,
Yes.
you know,
Now you're
so
also working with a like a hunting outfit, right? Some outfitters.
yeah, yeah. It's more of like a like kind of like a subscription thing that you pay for, but they're in all 50 states. When we got some, I think we got some people in Canada. We got a guy in South Africa that runs a hunting camp down there, and there's a guy down in New Zealand also, but it's called Servicide, and it's really fantastic, man. I mean, if you're new to hunting or if you're experienced hunter and you wanted to try different things, like I don't know, you've lived in the South and you only hunted whitetail, and you're like, I like to get a shot at a mule deer or a blacktail
Yeah.
or go to the Badlands. We got members all over the country,
How do you spell that?
and oh, I'm horrible at spelling. Hold on, let me look at it.
I just want to make sure I have it right.
Yeah, hold on. It's come on.
Sorry to put you on the spot, man.
C No, no, it's okay. I'm just bad at spelling. Cervicide, Cervicide. So we have there's regular internet page you can go on. It's .com, so it's Cervicide, so it's CERVICIDE.com. You can check it out. We have hunt links, and that's the thing. Like the hunt links are just fantastic. We have, webinars and things like that going over hunting strategies and food plots, and we have partners. There's We got like 200 partners, so you get huge discounts for, I mean, not huge. Some of them are good. Some of them are kind of like mom and pop, but we still get like 5%, 10% discount. And
Sweet.
then hunting clothes, mossy oak, and things like that. So you're into hunting, or maybe you want to get into hunting, you
Yeah.
know, check it out. Definitely. It's really cool. It's fantastic.
Man, that's so
So
cool. I'm gonna check it out for sure.
yeah,
Like I said, that's I love to hunt and fish. Uh, my passion is the outdoors, man. Like, well,
yeah,
I say my passion, but that's that
yeah,
ADHD. I have a lot of passions.
yeah.
You know,
They're all over
but
the place. I understand, man. Yeah.
dude, that sounds so cool though. Yeah, man, I appreciate you coming on the show. And
No, I really,
uh,
really enjoyed it, man. It's fantastic.
I know you shared some hard stuff, but I greatly appreciate it, and I know it's going to help somebody out there. So
I really hope so. I really do.
yeah,
So,
it
and
will.
I mean, if anybody wants to contact, I have an Instagram, so like through my business accounts, or you can find me on Instagram also or Facebook.
Okay.
So
Is there
yeah.
a certain name that you want to on Instagram or Facebook?
Well, my personal one is the Bupacha Warrior. So it's MAPUCHE_warrior. So you can find me there. That's my personal Instagram one. So you can shoot me a message, or whatever. You want to talk about hunting, that's great. And you want to, like any of these topics, I guess, have come up, you want to reach out or whatever, or that's fine. That's more than fine. So, or you want to go hunting and talk about this stuff, we can do that too.
Yeah,
That'd be
best of
cool.
both worlds.
So yeah, yeah. do some fishing or whatever, do anything like that. So yeah, always up for learning new things. That's part of the ADHD. You just follow the dopamine, you know? So,
That's it, man. That's it. Well, brother, I appreciate you so much. God bless you and your family, and stay in touch with me, man.
oh yeah, definitely, man. We got to talk some more.
Yeah,
Definitely.
yeah. All right. We have a good night, brother.
You too, man.
All right. Later.
Bye.